I know this thing is on, and I know that you can hear me. Nursing and healthcare needs advocates and activism. So what are you waiting for? Let's do the damn thing. Hi, and welcome back to The Gritty Nurse, an unfiltered conversation about healthcare, nursing, and the intersection of health politics and policy. My name is Amy, and I am The Gritty Nurse. This podcast examines hot topics in healthcare and discusses the changes that we need to see to have a more efficient, robust, and ethical healthcare system that is safe not only for the patients that we see, but also for those who work in the system as well. Sorry, no fluff here, just awesome, compassionate humans and a lot of grit. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast platform, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on any real stuff from The Gritty Nurse. Hi, and welcome to The Gritty Nurse Podcast, an unfiltered discussion about health and healthcare at the intersection of politics. My name is Amy-Archibald Verli, and I'm The Gritty Nurse. Conflict is something that we all know all too well in healthcare. But how do we deal with it amongst our peers? If you ask me, I'd say terribly. The little guys usually get the worst end of the stick, while the big guys go unpunished. And then if you ask HR, they might tell you to do some modules on resilience. But yet it is such a harmful environment when we are working in a place where there's a lot of conflict, whether it's through patients and families or through, with our peers, that we really need to be able to deal with it and manage it properly and effectively. It colors the experiences that we have working on the floors, on the units. And we know that through science, it actually directly impacts care. This is not anecdotal. There's a significant body of research that links conflict among healthcare teams to poor patient outcomes. Numerous studies have shown direct and measurable relationships. And here's just a couple key findings from the research. I'm not going to go into it. I will just add it in post. Okay. And that is what we're talking about today, resolving conflict. And I believe that this will be fun. Here with us today is Lena Morgan. Lena is a former midwife who transitioned into the field of communication and conflict resolution. She's the creator of Fight Languages. She is the creator of the Fight Languages framework, a system designed to help individuals and groups understand and navigate conflict more efficiently, ultimately turning conflict into connection. Welcome to the show, Lena.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Amy. I'm psyched to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here because you know what? If you know that you've dived into the world of healthcare, and we'll get to that now, but how about before we, talking about conflict, maybe tell us a little bit about your journey and yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have done a lot of things over the years, but really my focus has always been around empowering women. I love what's possible when it comes to recognizing our own power, and midwifery was a natural place for me to explore that. So I was a midwife for over a decade and owned birth centers. I practiced exclusively out of the hospital, and it was really focused on helping that client, that mom, that family find their voice and advocate for themselves. And so through that lens, conflict resolution and communication in general was the top of the list every time, because I believe she's the expert in her body, her baby, and her family. But then we hit that communication block where she's entering into a healthcare system that says, no, actually, we know better. We're going to tell you what to do now. So it was so fascinating to help families walk through that. Plus, I was helping families walk through this massive transition of welcoming a new child into their lives. And what does that mean for their relationship? So because the healthcare field is a really difficult one, I ended up with PTSD, burnout. I had to leave midwifery, but still wanted to find something that was meaningful and connected to people and had that, empowerment. And man, it was a pretty seamless transition into conflict resolution. And as soon as I started down that path, I was like, okay, the love languages are cool. I get that. But man, what about how we fight? And so I went online like, this has to exist, right? And found nothing that was a tangible framework that made it easy to start fighting differently. It was like amazing to think back of all of the people that I've seen, the communication styles, the conflict styles. I put it out online saying, hey, I think this is really interesting. I'd love to talk about it. It went viral. And I was like, all right, let's have this conversation.
Right. I think that's amazing. And I think that you're absolutely right. And I think this is kind of like the time is ripe to have this conversation again. Similarly, conversations around compassion, like I feel like we're going not in the right direction here in relation to being able to express ourselves. I think that, technology is an amazing thing, but also can be the downside, because one of the things even my husband had noticed, who's a social worker, he's like, and he works with teenagers, he's like, the communication between them and their parents are so poor because
Yep.
of social media and because of the way that they navigate conversations. We can't navigate conversations in 30-second bites, right? It just
Yeah.
doesn't really work that way. So I think this is a perfect time to talk about communication and to talk about conflict and how to talk about conflict resolution. Was there any specific moment or anything that you could pinpoint that made you say, other than just like, you looked for it and said, hey, there's nothing here. Was there a moment where you're just like, I think we need to deal with conflict better?
I mean, I have been incredibly conflict avoidant my whole life. Like if there was tension, I'm stepping in, I'm trying to smooth things over, So for me, it was really, there was a challenge in conflict because I was so uncomfortable with it. And
Ah,
so I don't know if there was a moment so much as a lifetime of avoiding conflict, trying to make everybody okay all the time, and realizing that has worked 0% of the time. What if I
right.
just lean into this discomfort and figure out what's here? And what was amazing was like how quickly conflict became, rather than this like huge, scary, looming thing in the corner, it became like, oh my gosh, there's so much information here. There is so much I can learn about myself, this other person. Like, this holds the potential to transform this whole relationship. That got
Wow.
really exciting.
Yeah, I would say that you're probably not on the wrong end of the spectrum initially, that most people do avoid conflict or they shy away from conflict. They'd rather smooth things over, make things easier. I actually particularly was in a relationship where, like I think people like to people please, right? Like, and I think it's just kind of
Yeah,
like, okay, if I can just do whatever this person wants, or I can avoid this, or I just kind of smooth things and gloss things over, that this problem won't resurface. But we know it always will come back. Like if we don't deal with that conflict or that issue, that it'll somehow bubble to the surface, right? So
absolutely. And even if it's not with that person, you're going to get someone else that has a different flavor of the exact same problem. So no
right.
matter what, you're going to get an opportunity to deal with it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, again, thinking about healthcare, it's just like, I know you were a midwife, so you probably went to the OR with your patients, right? If they had to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the conflict in labor and delivery, I
Yep.
think about my experiences as a labor and delivery nurse and working with midwives, and there was conflict and tension there where there really shouldn't have been. There was like this weird kind of like competition. I'm like, why? And I got the sense, and I didn't have it. I was kind of like, yeah, they're doing their thing. We're doing our thing. They need support. We support them. But I remember like seeing this kind of like, oh, the midwife's taking our room. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like we're all working here
Absolutely.
together. And I
Yeah.
don't know if that was very specific to L&D, but it was just like, there was this kind of sense of like, instead of bringing people into the fold, just like being very siloed about it. And
Mm-hmm.
and I remember watching, particularly in labor and delivery, that if you have those types of conflicts, we're going to see that decline in patient care, right?
Yeah.
Or, I saw this a lot where, let's say it was a handover from a midwife to now a labor and delivery nurse, because let's say there were complications that were arising, that they were like, well, she didn't notice this. And it's just like, what are you doing? Why is
Mm-hmm.
it even a concern? We are here to deal with the patient, and that should be our primary focus. And then we could deal with the conflict later. And I can tell you this: none of these nurses that were like, never spoke once to one of these midwives to say that there were ever any issues.
Exactly.
Then that is the issue with conflict or any form of conflict resolution, because you can't have a problem and then not address it, right? And even if you're
Oh
wrong
my
in the
gosh.
problem, you should still say something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and as that midwife taking someone in with complications, always had the feeling like, okay, be mad at me, that's fine. Feel like, oh, there's a lot to say there, obviously.
I know
Like,
it's like a whole other conversation,
you're
right? It's a
seeing
whole other podcast.
100%, yeah, of our complications. You're never seeing when this works perfectly so much of the time, but
Right.
that's fine. Like, be upset with me, but it is when it would overflow onto the
Mhm.
patient that was really so sad to see, because like anything, any relationship anywhere, we're going to thrive when we feel seen, heard, and understood. And if
Right.
you're coming in, we'd hit that nurse that would be like, well, you've got to change your plan. I know this isn't what you wanted and you hate being here. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. No, We're so
Yeah,
grateful we can come in and get this care. We're here for a reason. That assumption of conflict, when really, like, my client and I had been talking about this her whole pregnancy, because that's
right.
always a potential option that we'll need to transport. And we want that to be as positive, as empowering as possible. So it is, I think healthcare is one of those settings, and particularly in the hospital setting, where we really see like that, power structure firmly in place. And the way that people will show up to keep that power structure in place is mind blowing. People will
I
double
could not
down.
agree with you more.
Yeah. I'm in nursing school right now, actually, going back
Are you
into the
really?
healthcare field.
What?
Yeah,
So
totally.
that's like a whole other conversation. Oh my gosh. So Lena, you're gonna come back to talk about being a nursing student because what?
Love that. I have
That's amazing.
thoughts and feelings and opinions on it, but
Oh, I'm sure you do.
it's driving me crazy right now, because as they're teaching us, okay, here's how you're going to go through an SBAR and hand off care to, or here's your nursing diagnosis. Here's what you're allowed to do. Here's what you're not allowed to do. Here's how you're allowed to talk to the physician. I'm like, is
They're still
anybody
saying that in
else?
nursing school, how you're allowed to speak to the physician.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't want to tell the physician what to do. You want to make these very kind of gentle, general not even suggestions.
What world
It's
are we living in?
I'm like, like, this is the problem with everything. This is how we keep these power dynamics that are hurting all of us in
100%.
place, is
Oh
we
my
teach
goodness.
new nurses, you just need to be thankful to be here, and you need to speak to them with the appropriate reverence. And, yeah,
And
I'm
you're coming at it
having a
from
time.
another perspective because you're an expert in midwifery care. So it's not like we
Yeah,
we can okay, next
love
episode
it.
that will be the
Love it.
next topic. I think one of the things, just to kind of circle it back, the patients can feel that, right? The patients can feel
Yes.
if there is that conflict. It breeds mistrust, right? If
Yeah.
they're fighting, then am I getting the care that I'm supposed to be? Or is there something wrong? Or is there something they're not telling me? So we need to be in healthcare better at solving conflicts and better at resolving them. Tell me about fight language. Because when I saw this, I thought to myself, I'm like, I definitely have a fight language. I definitely have to get this book because I know my type of personality. And I'm like, I don't want to swing too far one way. Like I know like if it's a spectrum, right? I'm kind of like, I know I'm probably, I kind of ride towards the conflict. So I'm the one at the front of the line. Be like,
Yeah.
ah,
Right.
but I know
Which
there has
I
to be
love. I mean,
some kind of a
just
balance.
just to be aware of that, though, it speaks so much to, like, the fight languages that people are like, oh, they're so, like, conflict prone. And I'm like, yeah, thank goodness we have them around, because
Right.
much like with this podcast, right? You want to bring that conversation into the light, and, like, the igniters, the amplifiers, they want to bring that tension into the light rather than let it hang out and fester in the background. So they get this
Right.
bad rap of being, like, conflict prone, and it's like, man, thank goodness they are. Thank goodness they're willing to have this conversation.
It's like,
So,
phew,
yeah.
we've got our strengths and we've got our weaknesses,
Yes.
right? So yes, tell me a little bit more
Okay.
about fight language.
So 5 different types of people in a fight. Nobody has just one fight language. It's going to change depending on the person you're talking to, depending on the situation, depending on how safe and secure you feel, depending on how triggered you are in the situation. Right. So because there's 5 fight languages, nobody's just one fight language. Oh, and none of these fight languages are any better than the other one, right? Pros and cons
Even
to
playing
all
field.
of them. Yep. They're all amazing. We need all of them in the fight, and we can also be deeply harmed by all of them. So to begin with, we've got the igniter. This is our anger response. These are the people that you're like, man, they just blow up. And they tend to, when they're in that, like, I call it, rather than positive or negative, I call it protective and productive. So when we're in that protective fight language, it's the worst side of us. It's the stuff that we've probably been doing since we were kids, right? We blow up. We get so angry. As the igniter, we say the meanest thing we can think of just to shut that fight down. On the productive side, though, that igniter is our matriarch. She's the one that's like, absolutely not. No, not in my house, not around me. That's not going to happen. And she's firm and grounded, and she has boundaries. And we love being around her because she feels safe. But until we get to that productive space, yeah, nobody wants to piss her off. Like everyone's like, ooh.
She's like the anger in Inside Out, just like,
yes,
ah!
yes, exactly. So then we have our amplifier. This is the emotional response. These are the people that are like, I hate getting angry. I always cry. Or, like it's all about me when we're in a fight, and this is how I'm feeling, and you're not listening to me because you did this and now I feel this way. So the amplifier, to back up, the igniter wants to feel protected. If someone's not going to protect them, they're going to protect the relationship and the situation by pulling the pin out of the grenade. The amplifier wants to feel seen and understood in their emotional experience. So that means until they feel like you really get what they're saying, they're just going to get bigger and bigger until you can't help but acknowledge how they're feeling.
Right.
Love it. In their protective space, yeah, they're just a wounded baby deer. They're so, like everybody is the worst and mean to them, and they're crying and my life is so hard. But in that productive space, this is the fight language that's able to articulate the feelings that the rest of us are like, man, I don't even know what that is, right? Fortunately, like our igniters have been told probably since they were children, you get so crazy. Why are you so mad? You get so angry. Our amplifiers have been told, why are you so dramatic? Why do you make everything about
You're too emotional.
Exactly. You're too much. Then we have our negotiators. Our negotiators are the connection-based response. They just want to keep the peace. They want everyone to be okay. They're like, I just don't think it's that big of a deal. I think you misunderstood what they said. Or why are you getting so upset? It's nothing. So in their protective response, they're smothering everything possible. They're minimizing. They're like, no, it's not that big of a deal. But in their productive response, man, you have a problem. You want to talk to a negotiator. Because they're like, I want to understand you. I want to know how this feels for you, what your experience is. That's amazing. So the negotiators, they think they're doing this amazing job of trying to understand everyone else's experience and fix things for it. The problem is nobody asked them to fix it. So everybody around them is like, dude, I'm fine. I can handle this. Why are you telling me I'm not capable now? Then we have the analyzers. This is our logic-based response. They are like, bring the facts, bring the receipts, or don't come at all. Like, if you can't back it up, my sources are in APA format. I don't know what you're bringing to this. They're in their protective response, they are nitpicking everything you say. They're like, well, but 3 weeks ago you said this. So I think I just negated your whole argument, and like, why are we even still talking? Absolutely. They're the lawyer, the judge, the jury. They're like, it's black and white. My way makes sense. Your way doesn't. What are we still talking about? But on that productive side, the analyzer comes in and they're able to like cut through all the emotion of the situation to be like, okay, cool. Where is it we're trying to get to though? What's the facts of the situation before we get out in the weeds? Let's find a way through this. That's so helpful. And then we have our extinguisher. So the extinguisher is the escape-based response. They don't want to fight. They never want to fight. They would be happy if tension rises up, if they could just like melt into the floorboards and not be here anymore. In the productive or the protective response, these are the people that are like, tensions start rising. They can't even make eye contact. They're wandering around the room. They're doing dishes. They're like, you know what? I got to head to the office or the gym or anywhere but here. Like, it's almost like they disappear into their minds and they just shut down, or they disappear out of the house and they're like, you can't fight with me if I'm not near you.
If I'm not here,
On that productive side, though, we all need a little extinguisher in us, right? Because we need the ability to like hit pause, find a time that we can hit play again, but know when things are getting elevated, it's really not going to be very productive and it's time to take a break.
Yeah, and so, it sounds like almost like knowing when to walk away too, like knowing when the fight is done and just walking away. Yeah, I like that.
Right? Yep, exactly. And usually hearing them, everyone's like, it's really easy to pick out your partner or your kids or your parent.
I was like, that's my husband, that one. The analyzer is my husband. This one, my daughter is definitely the negotiator. My other son's like me. We're both on the angrier side. Yeah, no, for sure. No, I think that's there's such poignant descriptions, right? And I think everybody can find a sense of themselves in one of them. And then, like you said, like I can see where some of my fight language could be a little bit of a negotiator, depending on what the situation might be. Like I can see that, different styles might be for different occasions too. But I know that I'm predominantly one more over than another. But I definitely see at times in my own life that I've used them in different places.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we often become the negotiator or the analyzer at work, or maybe the extinguisher, where we're like, it's not worth it. Nothing ever gets resolved. I just don't even want to be a part of it. And that's why, so I have a free quiz on my website at fightlanguages.com, just 10 questions, and it tells you what your top 3 fight languages are. And I think it is fascinating when people take it several times. Think of your partner the first time. Think of a parent you struggle with the second time. Think of your coworker the third time, to get a sense of what are the different fight languages that I'm using in these situations. Because the goal is to become fluent in your fight language, right? So you can start speaking it more productively. You can translate what this other person's saying, because they're probably doing a terrible job of, speaking this fight language productively, so you can work with them on it. You can hear what they're saying behind whatever crazy thing is coming out of their mouth, and actually make it start to be productive and not just have that same old fight again.
No, I think it's something that's definitely needed, not just in healthcare, but just in general. Like I think it's such an easy way, well, not easy, but such a way that people can really connect and relate to it. And again, I think so like, I guess my next question to you would be, so, healthcare is kind of like the wild, wild west. How do we think that we could use the fight languages to help healthcare? Because I can see it. Like I can definitely see that this should be probably like, entry level training before you even like start working in healthcare. But like, how do you see that it could, help and change the face of healthcare?
Man, when it comes to patient care in particular, it makes me so excited, the potential that exists there when you understand this combative patient that is not going to get the level of care they need, sometimes won't get out of their own way to let that care happen, to be able to speak their fight language, to understand what they're saying behind what they're, verbally throwing at you, to be able to de-escalate a situation just by having someone feel understood, because you've stopped speaking your own fight language and now you're speaking theirs, means that we can provide care that is really what people need, rather than the, like theoretical band-aids on a situation of like, I give up, I don't know. Or a lot of times, gosh, if we have an extinguisher coming in for whatever healthcare they need, we know that this is someone that's going to need time to ponder things. I speak fast, I move quickly, and I know if I'm talking to an extinguisher, I need to let space exist for them to even gather their thoughts, understand what they don't understand yet, and ask me those questions. And that's going to be someone that I'm going to want to follow up with in an hour to see what didn't make sense about that. How are you feeling about that now?
So then if we have an amplifier who's having this big emotional experience, it would be really easy, particularly if it's a woman that we're talking to. We know that healthcare providers are more likely to dismiss that woman and her emotions. But if we can come at it saying, well, this is an amplifier. She's having an emotional experience. And if I can acknowledge the emotions in a way where she feels understood. Again, this is so important, right? Because we think, okay, no, I acknowledged them, but you didn't. She didn't feel like you understood her, right? It's not done yet. But as soon as it is, it's like a light switch. It's like, okay, like I'm an amplifier through and through when I'm not in my people-pleasing negotiator era. And my partner's like, it's wild to see that light switch. I have a daughter that's an amplifier as well. And when that person feels understood, it's like, oh, okay, I can let it go now. So to go from a patient who feels like I can't even do anything here to someone who now feels like, okay, you get me. We've got someone who's far more likely to follow through on compliance. We've got someone who is more engaged in their care. We know that they're going to have a better health outcome. We know that they will quite literally heal better because they're not having that internal conflict anymore about the situation.
I think the first inclination is to think about your own fight style and how might you have a conversation with someone else. But to take it on as to be like, well, what is this other individual's fight style and how can I have a conversation with them, I think that's actually really, really powerful. I think that that's actually a really good form of communication because it is actually looking at someone else and saying, how do I better understand this person and this person's perspective, and how do I meet them where they are? And the point that you mentioned about, women, I think particularly just to kind of add on and build that, although that some women might have that type of style, I think it's also important to follow that through with action, because there is evidence in healthcare that women do come in and say they have these types of healthcare complaints and feel that they're fobbed off. And then the other piece is there isn't anything done. For example, like I spoke to someone today who had a 6-year run of trying to find out that she had MS at the end of it, and was like, now I felt I was gaslit the whole time, but now I'm validated with the fact that something was wrong with me. And I think that's the other piece. Like, we just need to do a better job of really trying to understand where people are coming from, and then couple that with action, right? Like, I think it's one thing to understand, but then bring it that step forward by saying, okay, here's what I'm going to do to help with X, Y, and Z, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, when we look at autoimmune issues, women on average, it's like 6 to 7 years longer to get a diagnosis than it is for a man. Like it's wild when we look at women's healthcare in particular. And so much of what we're doing with the fight languages is we're telling someone, I believe you. I believe that's the experience you're having. And to take that into a healthcare setting, to say, I might not understand how it feels for you, and I might not know why it's happening, but I believe that that is your experience. Huge. And I think often healthcare providers feel like if I say, I believe that's how you feel, I now have to take responsibility and fix it immediately. And it's like, man, that's not what we're saying here, right? What we're saying is, you validated this person's experience. You're going to get more information about how it feels for them, what the symptoms they're experiencing. You're going to have an easier time of working through that process because you have this patient on your team now, right? You guys are now the detectives figuring this out together, versus the frustration I'm sure that providers feel of like, well, but if every ache and pain, I'm going to be here forever trying to figure out what this is. And let's just get you out of here so I can move on to the next person on my list.
In terms of trying to better understand each other, whether it's patient to provider, patient to another patient who might be sharing a room with them, or whatever the case may be, and colleague to colleague. I'm going to circle back to this one where it's just kind of like, so I can see how it works very well with patients and families, and I think it should translate the same to a coworker. But what are your thoughts and opinions on? Do you think is it completely transferable? Do you think that it will work the same way? I think it could. I think that relationships between team members are a little bit different than relationships between patients, but I'd love to hear your perspective.
Absolutely. And we've all worked with those people where it's like, oh man, don't talk to him before he's had coffee, or this person is just notoriously difficult to work with. Or, this person, it's like, yeah, she'll say everything's fine to your face, and then you come back later and then like everything's in an uproar. And to come at it with the fight languages changes everything. I mean, I've seen it happen time and time again. I speak to huge organizations and schools and small organizations, all over the place. It really changes the conversation, because the first thing it does is you think, well, what is this person's fight language? Like this person who's in front of me and they're kind of like flying off the handle, or I feel like they're being really passive aggressive right now. So the first question you think to yourself automatically is, okay, what could their fight language be? And just that question, now we've introduced curiosity, because we've stopped. It's not become about us, right? It's still about them. So we haven't, I often say, like, watch the words fall out of their mouth and onto the floor, look at them there and tell them what you see. So rather than picking those words up and making it personal about us, now we're still seeing the person in that experience. So we have curiosity, therefore we have empathy. Okay, they're speaking a fight language. What fight language could it be? Why would this fight language make sense right now for them? What is it that they're doing a terrible job of trying to tell me about? We've taken that huge 10,000 foot view of the situation and we're like, what else is going on? Rather than where we start, which is, why are you doing this to me? I didn't do anything wrong. Now I'm defensive. Now I want to defend myself like anyone would. And I'm going to push back. This other person's like, well, now I really don't feel seen, heard, understood. So I'm going to have an even bigger reaction to it. When you have, 50% of that relationship changes, the whole relationship changes. This person you've had so much tension with, yeah, I get it. It's unfair to say, okay, you're the one that's going to come in and change this. But also, that's the power you have, is you can come in, say, all right, what is their fight language? In the book, it's bullet points. I want to make this as easy for you as possible. And I put lots of say this, don't say this, try this, remember this, so you can have some understanding about that fight language. So if it's your charge nurse that you're like, man, she and I cannot get on the same page. If that next interaction you were listening to her thinking, what is this person's fight language that I'm struggling with so much? Just that, the curiosity. Now we've got empathy for, okay, she's speaking a fight language. There's probably a good reason for it. I don't understand why. I have no idea what's going on with her life. But now I've got some small things I can do to start changing the conversation.
At the end of the day, you might understand someone else's fight language, and you might be able to try to, communicate with them through that knowledge, but also to remember that you cannot control how that person's going to respond. You cannot control how they're going to respond to you, even if you're trying to, be more supportive, and to recognize that maybe the next part of your fight language is to walk away, right? I think that you'll see in healthcare, particularly, you did midwifery, and then you'll see in nursing where you're kind of just like, all right, this is definitely not a battle worth having. Or it might be, I think we need to talk about how you had a conversation with me, or how you said this to me in the OR, or whatever the case may be. Those conversations are less likely to happen, but I think they're hugely empowering when nurses do it. Again, really shouldn't matter. I'm here in Canada. I know you're in America, but it really shouldn't matter. I should say that our fight language should be consistent. We are not handmaidens. Sorry, Florence Nightingale. Absolutely. We are not handmaidens. We are not servants. We're not subservient to. We deserve respect because we have knowledge and judgment in the area and the expertise of a nurse. And I really want you to take that with you, because I really hope that you can take the fight languages to nurses and help them learn a little bit more about this and empower them to have at the end of the day, better forms of communication. I think this is wonderful. I want to take it everywhere. Lena, jump in my backpack. We got some people to talk to. But yeah, no, I think this is so wonderful. So I'm looking at the time. Is there anything that we did not touch on that you'd like to touch on in the last 5 minutes here or so?
Yeah, really quick. So like you were saying, right? A lot of times we're in these conversations with someone else and we're like, okay, there's a limit to what I can do here, and maybe I just need to walk away. So the whole other 50% of the fight languages that is stunningly effective is just recognizing what your fight language is, so you can recognize when you're starting to get reactive. Because most people only realize that they're in a space of reactivity. Like for an igniter, for example, you don't recognize it when you're irritated, when you're frustrated, when you're getting angry. You recognize that you're reactive when you are filled with rage and you have the fire coming out of your head. You're like, I did it again. The amplifier maybe doesn't realize until they're like, oh my gosh, I'm trying not to cry now. So to start speaking your own fight language means you can catch when you're going to get reactive, and this conversation's not actually going to be productive miles sooner in the conversation than you would have otherwise. So if you have that difficult person at work and in the OR, this situation happened, rather than continuing to engage, you can be like, oh my gosh, I'm getting reactive now. This isn't going to be helpful anymore. I still have to stay here. The surgery is not done. But whatever they say, I'm just going to let it fall on the floor. We're going to pick this up another time. I have control over me, and I'm going to choose not to engage with this in whatever they're trying to stir up.
You know what? We need to learn more about ourselves. And I think the more we learn about ourselves and the way that we communicate, the better communicators we can be to other people as well. And then to have those moments, because for example, and I think I've trained myself over the years where it's just I'll write that scathing email and I'll look at it and be like, I can't send that. So I will retype it and then send it. But it took me time to have that recognition to say, okay, I know if I write this and send this out that I'm going to elicit another type of reaction as well. And to know that within myself, that it's all right, I can still write a scathing email, but in a very different manner. So I think this is such an important conversation to have. Thank you, Lena, for coming on Greeners podcast to talk about the fight languages and talk about resolving conflicts. We're going to have you back if you're willing to come, because, oh my gosh, we have to talk about nursing school. And then we need to have, you just finished nursing school, and then we need to have like a 5-year vote to be like, oh my God, tell me now how you feel.
I would love that. Yeah, no, the just systemic disempowering of women in particular, and really everyone, is staggering. No, it's wild the way right now the U.S. is like,
you can't have an abortion here, there, anywhere. Your body doesn't really belong to you, but we're not going to talk about the Epstein files. We're really confused.
Right?
Yeah,
I know. Well, and I'm in Alaska, so we're like, we're just hoping that Canada's going to reach over.
These other states here, saw like that. The Looney Tunes like sawing on, and just like
makes more sense to absorb us.
But Lena, it was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on the Greeners podcast to have this conversation with me. And I'm sure we'll be connected in the future. So I'll make sure I drop all of your links, how to find your book, where to find you, and to stay connected. And workplaces, hello. Lena has a message that you need to learn about. So thank you and stay tuned. Looking for a great gift for a nurse or someone who needs to learn about nursing? Check out my national best-selling book, The Wisdom of Nurses, Stories of Grit from the Bedside. Thank you so much for listening to The Gritty Nurse with Amy-Archibald Verli. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast platform, please hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss out on any awesome episodes from The Gritty Nurse. Thank you so much, and stay tuned until next time. Stay gritty.